ready to start? Am I first on the docket?
Yep.
Okay. The docket system. I'm just proposing to change each resolution and motion. I create a docket for. We get to the meeting and pass around each time we're passing around and signing or not for each resolution and motion. I'm proposing, if you would authorize me to do so, to create a master docket for each committee. The master docket would have each resolution noted separately. A vote would be taken for each one, just like it is right now. The only change is, instead of passing around the paper in between the meeting, the paper would, you would get the master docket at the end of the meeting and be asked to sign one docket as opposed to, the several going back and forth during the meeting. You're going to vote on each resolution and motion separately, and it's going to be recorded. There'll be 4 yeas. If there's any legislator that opposes something, that will be recorded. But then instead of you having to sign, several dockets and the confusion that it kind of causes sometimes, you would be asked to sign one master docket at the end of your committee meeting, which states right on there that you are authorizing the resolutions and motions listed on the above docket have been separately considered and voted on. All resolutions, except those specifically rejected by the committee, are hereby forwarded to the board for action. That's what I was asking for. It's just a lot of paper for us to track. It creates a lot of paper. The voting would remain the same. It's the only difference, like I said, is instead of you getting a docket to sign for each resolution or motion, they're all noted on the master docket. You're voted on separately. It would be recorded. Your vote, if you objected to something, your vote would be recorded as rejecting. And then the only thing that, instead of signing several separate, you'd be asked to sign one master docket at the end with all of the information there. That's the only real change to it. And that's what I'm proposing for your authorization today.
Andrew, your thoughts?
Sounds good to me, because we are chasing paper around this table.
Yeah.
Basically, the purpose of this is to expedite things a little bit.
Yes.
I'm all for that.
Really
saves paper.
Less paper for us to track. And
You need a motion?
if you would, please.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we change the name.
Ron made motion, Andrew seconded.
Okay, I don't care.
Well, you raised your hand.
Oh, I thought it came from behind me, seriously, when you said Ron. I thought.
Oh, I'm sorry. Got a second? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Terry. Thank you.
Does that still come in front of the does that still come in front of the rules committee? Finance and rules?
This is not in the standing rules. This is like our internal paper processing.
You could
Yep.
actually cut that whole thing right out, couldn't you?
Well, it's not. It's.
I think you need a tracking.
I am proposing it at each committee today. So this committee has voted in favor. So I will be presenting it at each committee. So everyone will get a vote.
Of course.
And okay. So we're good. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Brittany?
Right here.
I'm sorry.
Awesome.
You got a presentation for us?
Yes. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brittany Davis with Lewis County Economic Development. I know the agenda said IDA update, but I'm actually giving a brief presentation on our Naturally Lewis marketing update, and essentially how we are using Naturally Lewis to promote Lewis County as a great place to live, work, and do business. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 4 main ways that we are promoting Naturally Lewis in Lewis County, and talk a little bit about the results that have come from all of that promotion. And I kind of want to backtrack 4 years. I just want to remind you all that 4 years ago is when the Naturally Lewis brand was created. The county did hire the Page Group to create the brand, and we implemented the brand 3.5 years ago. That's how long I've been working with economic development. So again, this is very brief. If you have any questions, please let me know. So the first way that we are promoting Naturally Lewis, and 3.5 years ago, we implemented all of these social media platforms. And what I mean by promoting Naturally Lewis through social media is that we're promoting all of the good things about Lewis County. So we're promoting why you should live here. We're promoting that cool new business that opened in downtown. We're promoting our natural beauty, and that this is a great place to raise a family. We're promoting the resources that are available to businesses. And through these 4 online platforms, we're sharing those things. So you can tell over the past 3 years, we've seen a significant increase in the amount of followers, and they've essentially doubled each year. So good numbers, still a lot of work to do, but they're essentially increasing. And it's been really interesting to watch all of these different platforms because each platform has a different audience. So for example, our Facebook audience is a very general, broad Lewis County audience, whereas Instagram is a lot of millennials, a lot of businesses. So the way we post and promote Lewis County items is very strategic based on the platform that we're using. Second, we're using our naturallylewis.com website. If you've not taken a look at our website, I would encourage you to do so. We're utilizing Coughlin and Marvel to help us with that website, and they do a really, really awesome job. So I wanted to compare the numbers. These are the analytics from our website from last year to this year. More specifically, I was looking at the page views, so the number of pages on the Naturally Lewis website that people are looking at per year. So last year we were at about 19,000. That number is a little bit skewed. We were probably at around 20 to 21,000. Compared to this year, we were over 31,000 page views on our website. And I do want to reiterate, social media and website work hand in hand. So we are using our social media to bring people back to our website and vice versa. So for example, I might be creating an article on our website, a spotlight on a small business, and sharing that on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn, and that's bringing people back to our website. But what's really interesting about this data is that I'm not posting any more articles from our website this year than I was last year. It's about the same. So these numbers are telling me that more and more people are coming to our website organically, meaning on their own. We don't need social media to bring people to our website because people are starting to realize what Naturally Lewis is, the resources that we have to offer, what Lewis County Economic Development does as an organization, and how we can help them. So these increase in numbers are a really good thing. Third, we are promoting Naturally Lewis through our events. We've had really, really great success with the events that we're holding. More specifically, I'm going to talk about our Business Leaders Breakfast that we host 4 times a year. We've had on average about 70 attendees at each one of these breakfasts, and the audience is completely diverse. We have small business owners, we have county employees, we have nonprofits, we have agencies, we have community members, people who just take an interest in things that are happening in Lewis County. And we're seeing a huge increase in attendance. And the reason why we're seeing an increase is because we're making these events meaningful to the audience. So for example, at our last Business Leaders Breakfast, Randy, you were there, I believe, we focused on workforce development in the health and human services industry. So essentially, we had 4 agencies come up to the table and present their issue. The issue is that currently they have 92 open positions in Lewis County right now, just between 4 health and human services agencies. So they presented the issue, and then we proposed some questions to the audience. like where have you seen workforce recruitment or retention done well? Could be anywhere in the country. And we had our tables write down all of our answers, and we took those answers back to the committee. So we're making these events meaningful. The people that are attending the events feel like their opinion is valued, their input is valued. So people they're really enjoying that, and we're seeing a really great turnout. We're also hosting networking events, definitely getting involved into more leadership initiatives in Lewis County, as well as various informational seminars. And lastly, we're promoting Naturally Lewis through our partnerships. I believe that this is one of the most important ways that we are promoting Lewis County. As an economic development agency, if it were not for us working with all of these partners, we would not be able to do what we do. A lot of times businesses come to us and we might not have the expertise in something that they need, but we have a huge array of partnerships and partners that we can refer these businesses to. So this is just a handful. These are local, these are regional, these are state partnerships, but we're continuing to create those partnerships through Naturally Lewis to essentially get Lewis County on the map, and it's working. So as a result of all this promotion, all of the work that we've been doing within our organization, and not just me, but our team as a whole, from January to October 1, we've met with over 60 businesses in Lewis County. And at this point, since we're mid-October, that number is definitely over 70. These are people who have crazy business ideas and just need someone to listen to their idea. These are existing business owners who are looking for funding because they want to expand. It's an array of consultations, and the fact that we are promoting Naturally Lewis and the resources that we have, these businesses are feeling more comfortable to come to us for that expertise. We've been featured in over 20 local, regional, and national publications just from January until October 1st about the work we are doing. And it's not bad articles. These are amazing articles about the things that are happening in Lewis County. And I gotta thank Julie for about half of those. She's been putting out some really great articles, and she promotes us very well. So thank you, Julie. We're seeing interaction from the community, and what I mean by this is, again, people are coming to us because they know who we are, they know what we're doing, and it's really cool to see on social media, for example, someone might post a picture of them hiking at Whetstone Golf, and they tag Naturally Lewis, or they use hashtag Naturally Lewis because they feel like they're a part of something. Businesses are tagging Naturally Lewis in their posts because they feel like they're finally a part of this business community. They feel like they're supported by someone or something, and that's Naturally Lewis. And lastly, not just with promotion, but everything else that we've been working on, site and infrastructure developments, general promotion of Lewis County. We've been able to submit 7 proposals to Empire State Development due to the work that we're doing. So the more that we promote, the more that we work together, the more that we focus on larger projects to get sites ready to go, the more Lewis County's on that map. Lewis County's in that playing field. And we're competing, with the big guns. Unfortunately, we don't often hear whether or not these companies choose New York State even. And we obviously haven't had success from these proposals, but it's the fact of the matter that we're working on projects that allow us to submit these proposals. So all in all, Naturally Lewis is growing. We're making a big impact on the community. People and businesses feel like they're a part of something, and we still have a lot of work to do, definitely. So again, I could go on for hours about a lot of other things that we're focused on, and I'm more than happy to sit down with anyone and discuss that if you're interested. But as of now, does anyone have any questions for me?
I have one.
Yeah.
I mean, with everything you've got going, you're gonna continue to build on what you already have going.
Yes.
Is there any other stuff that you're thinking about adding in the future, or that you can discuss on, or you're not at that level?
As far as Naturally Lewis?
Yeah, or you're pretty much what you presented, that's where we're staying for a while?
I mean, I guess if it comes to like, are we gonna place an ad in a national publication or things like that? I will say that for the past 3 years, we've been really focused on local. So how can we attract a large business here if our local businesses here don't feel like they're part of something, or they don't feel like they're supported? So we've been focusing locally, and that's why you've seen such a big increase in the amount of people that are attending our events. We're making strides here locally. Now it's time to start thinking more regionally and on a state level. So for example, we've sponsored the state conferences, and I feel that that's an important thing because it's getting our name out there, and it's working. So I think, yes, more regional partnerships, statewide partnerships, those are things that we definitely are going to continue to work on. Absolutely.
I appreciate what you did.
Thanks.
Takes a lot of work. Anybody else got any questions?
All right,
Thank
awesome.
you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Eric is here, if you want to put an update on
Sure.
IGA building.
Yep.
Obviously, I'm sure you're all very aware of the sale of our building 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago. So, you know, not something that really was the plan when we purchased that building a year ago, but I really think it fits very well with what we are trying to accomplish. Actually, I'll tie it back into Jerry's question a little bit. You know, what we thought the plan with that building was incubator space for small businesses. I think that might be another thing I would add to the question Jerry asked. I think that's an important priority for us, is to provide some space for a existing business or a new business to locate their operations. That's where that building was going. This change is a great change. We're looking forward to Ox Industries doing some really good things in that building in the future. We're going to have to kind of go back to that model that we were trying to build with that building and recreate that someplace else. So I think that's another kind of answer to Jerry's question, is what else are we trying to do in the future? We were moving down that path, and now we're going to have to just step back a little bit and continue on that path. But great opportunity, I think. We're looking forward to the next steps, and if you have any questions about that sale or what the next steps are, happy to try and answer them.
Just a couple quick points that are in my mind is that they put it back on the tax rolls as a taxable piece of property and created 20 jobs in process for that. 20.
Ox Industries doesn't want to make any commitments, but they definitely have, you know, given us the indication they're planning to grow and use the entire facility. That's their goal, is to use the entire building. And I think to Larry's comment, our goal, the IDA's goal, was to put the property back on the tax roll as we filled it up. So we didn't want to pay taxes if we didn't have tenants in it, but as we brought tenants in, we would put a higher percentage back on the tax roll. So now it's going to go back on the tax roll last week.
I have a question. We just got our truck road test and school bus road test.
Yep. Yeah, definitely.
What is going to happen?
We don't know, Andrea. Definitely something that, you know, the considerations on our end are those types of things that we're definitely good improvements with that because of that facility. We've made Ox very aware of that, and that it is an important thing for the community. We need to get Ox and the DOT connected to see if they would consider allowing it in the future. They haven't really expressed a great interest in having a lot of public access to the facility, but we're going to continue to ask them if they would consider it. We just need to see if they can, see how the operation works and work with the DOT.
How many days a week is that?
Honestly, the DOT hasn't kept us very well informed on that. They're there a couple times a month, maybe.
Okay.
Eric, I could help on that a little bit. I followed up after Eric advised us of the sale, and I'm in communication with the attorney for Ox. there's no set schedule, it's not done very frequently.
Okay.
So, and I've spoken with, Linda Hoskins about it, and, you know, whatever time frame, Ox's can fit in, I think, DMV, will be fine with that, because they don't do it more than once a week
Once a
or
week, yeah.
once,
Twice a month.
yeah,
Very,
so,
very limited.
so we're in discussions with them to hopefully
Thank you.
work something out.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Joan, and I mean, Ox is a very safety-oriented culture, they've made that very clear to us, so I think if it can be done safely, hopefully they will allow it.
Thanks.
Eric, was that discussed at all in your agreement with the sale and everything with them, and if not, why not?
Oh, it definitely was. I mean, there was two items like that and the helicopter landing in the parking lot were two things that we made them very clear about. But you know, our IDA board said we're not going to impact the potential sale because of those items. It just the sale just made a lot of sense, and we didn't want those to be deal breakers, if that makes sense.
Did they indicate that might have been a deal breaker?
Yeah, I think it would have been. Yeah, I mean, our goal was to sell them the property. We weren't going to put a contingency on it that, you know, they were going to say, oh, we're not going to do it just because of that one activity.
So potentially we may be looking for another place to do driver's tests.
That's possible, yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, isn't eventually the helicopter's gonna be landing at the hospital?
That issue's completely
Almost solved, yep.
I have two questions for you, Eric. One with the sale price, does that cover the rehab that the IDA has done in there?
We've actually spent slightly more than what we recovered from the sale. So purchase of the building and improvements to it.
Now with the recovery of that money, couldn't you kind of put up an incubator down at the Lions Falls site? I see that's pretty much knocked down. I mean, there's very little left standing.
Oh,
I mean, it's flat.
You're reading our minds. There's a couple of priorities that economic development's going to be focused on going forward. One is we do have to, again, two things that building was providing is one is the office space and the shared office environment. We're going to need an office for ourselves, so that item and the small business incubator, and those are the two projects we're going to focus on and use those funds, we believe, to try and move both of those forward. And Lions Falls is definitely kind of probably a target for.
Well, I mean, it just seems logical at this point because it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
The mill's gone.
Right. Yep.
And Kruger's there. Supposedly they would give a deal on electric.
Yep.
Supposedly
No, that has
German dogs.
That has long been the plan, and with Black River Valley Natural using one facility and gaining some momentum in their business, that is very likely where we will focus. And as you said, if possible, whether it's our organization building a building or partnering with a private developer, we are very much thinking that's a priority for the future.
But you wouldn't think it'd cost that much to put up a shell-style building where you'd have a lot of open space and maybe small office space. So you could put manufacturing equipment in through a big garage door and start there.
We haven't gotten to that level of analysis yet, but so hopefully it's.
Because the infrastructure's still there, correct?
Yeah, hopefully it can be accomplished, but I think you all know what the cost of just a metal building that can be used for multiple purposes is. It's not inexpensive.
But
so,
you're going to come in with some, you could borrow using that
yeah,
fund.
I mean that's absolutely what we're going to have to look at is the funds that we have available and where else we can get funds to make a project happen.
I just think that's probably one of the better sites to look at because of the power and the infrastructure being there.
That's absolutely, and that's why we've been focusing on that project for a long time. And as things are moving forward well, that property is now basically ready to go. So,
They
yep.
looked at it anyway.
Yep.
Very little left.
Eric, can you give us an update on the property on Trinity Ave just across the railroad tracks on the north side?
The property that is owned by the IDA.
Yeah.
It has the brewing equipment in it.
Mm-hmm.
Skewed Brewing, is based in Watertown, has been leasing it from the Industrial Development Agency for, I think, about a year, maybe a little over a year.
How much did they pay in the lease?
I can't give you an exact number, Dick. There's-
Ballpark, within a few $100,000?
within a few $100,000. There's actually two pieces to it. They're leasing the building and they're leasing the brewing equipment. Ballpark, $2,000 a month combined.
Okay.
That's a ballpark.
That's fair enough.
So they've been leasing the building and operating the equipment, and they've been in full production, I would say, since April, May.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think the business is doing well.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you for the time. If you have any other questions, I can answer them individually outside, or.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, a highway field project update, Stan Tech's Consulting Services.
Great. So I have some papers to pass around, and while I'm doing that, I thought I'd bring you a little bit of our office and to see. This is copies of the drawings that you saw in the report. This is actually an animation of a couple of the different concepts with the trucks making those turns.
Fueling?
So you can, the fueling truck, so you can actually, the fuel delivery truck, so you can actually kind of see the wheel path there and see the motions of the different axles of the truck as they go around. So leave that there for a couple minutes while I'm passing stuff out and then bring it around the other side.
You see it?
Is this it?
So
No, this is just their
these
presentation.
are copies of the updated October 14th report. Okay, yeah, there's one point where I'll need to get out of the PowerPoint and put in another one.
Oh, okay. I was hoping it was on me. Thank you.
Share one, that's that last one.
It's just kind of gives you a flavor for how the software works when we say that we're looking at the turn radiuses on the truck. So this is on a loop. You can see there's the fuel delivery truck. You can see the different color lines show the different wheel tracks. Gives you an idea of what it is that we're basing our concept on when we say it can and can't make the turn. So let's see.
The arrows go forward and back, and the middle is a laser.
Okay. All right.
Is it on?
Too many little lights. Oh, all right. Very good. Okay. So I'm Barbara Wagner with Stantec Engineering. This presentation is about the conceptual design report for the Lewis County Highway Department fuel system replacement. The goal of this report was to sift through number of alternative approaches. The goal for today is to get you to a point where you're ready to make a decision about the general direction that you would like the fuel system to go. And subsequently, we would go into a full design mode and get things ready to prepare construction documents, looking toward construction over the summer of 2020. So, Peter Nielsen, who was up here with me before, has retired. But before he left, he took this great photo that I wanted to start with because to me it just kind of says, why are we here? And it's to make sure that the guys who are in these trucks are able to get out on the road when they need to be there. So just briefly, we're going to talk about the background to the project, the design process that we went through, the opinions of probable cost, which I'm sure are of great interest all around the table, and just kind of summarize some of the pros and cons and findings from the conceptual study. I do want to take a little pause here at Stantec. We were talking about safety just a few minutes ago. It's a high priority with us. We start every meeting with a safety moment. And with the winter weather coming up, I wanted to take just a short couple minutes to talk about static electricity and safe refueling. When you drive up to any service station, there's the signs that say stay in your car or stay outside your car, don't go getting back in the seat. There's a reason for it. And that group that you see at the bottom, PEI, is the Petroleum Equipment Institute. It's a standards organization that some of our engineers sit on that develop standards for installing tanks, removing tanks. Some of them are cited in the DEC regulations. One of their primary focuses is safety. And this particular issue comes up in the winter when it's dry. You've got a lot of static. You're fueling the car next to a volatile fuel, and things can go south in a hurry. I just wanted to show you. If I hit the middle button, I get out of this particular slide. Is that right?
Do you want to click on this?
Yeah, I want the other PowerPoint. It's on the list. Yep, safety moment. Just the first one. And yeah. So this is an actual event. This was taken by a surveillance camera at the service station. You'll see as this lady gets out of the car, she's already kind of twitching with her shirt. You know how it is in the winter when everything seems to stick to you. She's not reading the labels. She's going to start fueling. And usually there's a little button where I can kind of skip some of the preliminaries, but we're going to cut to the chase here pretty quick. All right, especially when it's getting cold, people don't like hanging out where it's snowing and wet. The temptation is to go sit in the car, and when you sit in the car, what do? You slide along that seat. Maybe it's a smooth seat, maybe you're wearing polyester. And there's that little knob on the fuel nozzle that engineers hate because it lets people do this.
Tries to blow on it.
Wow. And maybe not the best reaction in this case, right? Oh, geez, the nozzle is on fire. Maybe I should hold it and wave it around. Please, if you're ever in that situation, just clear out. They've got a safety switch that can kill the dispenser in the convenience store. Don't you be trying to put it out.
Now, in New York State, they have the law that you can't have that automatic set, so it isn't pumping gas, so you've got to maintain bonding with that.
Yeah.
She used the gas.
So, I'm sorry, Ryan, would you be able to queue up
Your truck doesn't have a gas tank.
Oh, the Rebecca, okay.
Mine's missing it too. So.
And probably some of you have friends or spouses who do like to get back in the car while they're waiting. Pass the word. You can Google this and spread it around. So, that said, background to this particular project. So down at the maintenance garage, the existing fuel system has 2 underground diesel storage tanks. One is 12,000 gallons, one is 4,000 gallons. They were installed in 1992. That is, count on my fingers, 27 years ago. They're getting to the end of the normal service life that you would expect for underground tanks. There's no set date at which they fall apart, self-destruct. But 30 years is a pretty good run. In 2015, both the federal and the state regulations for petroleum storage tanks were updated. And Ward, I'm sure you remember you had to get your operators trained. There were new requirements both for the people who operate the tanks and for the tanks themselves. And there were, in particular, there were some new rules about having to test your sumps. So when you open up the manholes on that tank cover and you look down inside, you'll see like a plastic or a steel bucket where the pipes come in, where the fill pipes are, where the pump is located. And some of those now, didn't have to do this before, but now they have to be either double walled, which costs more, and monitored, or every 3 years you have to test them for leaks. And testing for leaks means filling them up with water, right, and watching to see whether they hold or not. So I'm not quite sure, was it just one fill bucket that was the issue here that kind of got things rolling?
Yeah, it was one in particular. I almost think there was two there that weren't holding.
It might have been two, yeah. Yeah, so had a couple, 1 or 2 instances where it didn't quite pass that new test. And a temporary fix was put in place. You can see how the fill bucket's been raised up above ground. But that kind of started the process of, gee, we could rehab these tanks, but they're almost 30 years old. It's probably time to start thinking about a replacement. So that's where we came in. And we're, feel free to jump in anytime and miss something. Oops. So the original request to Stantec was, please take a look at the 2 big choices in tanks are you can put them below ground or you can put them above ground. The highway department had already determined that probably 20,000 gallons total would be a good capacity. You can divide that up a few ways. You can divide it into 2 10,000 gallon tanks. So we were to look at both 2 10,000 gallon above ground and 2 10,000 gallon underground tanks. In addition, we were asked to evaluate a single tank with 2 compartments that would still add up to 20,000 gallons. That option we rejected pretty early on in the screening process once we had a good look at the site. It turns out that the compartmented tanks are actually more expensive. You would think it would go the other way, but it's than 2 single tanks. They also share the same outer wall. So these are all double wall tanks, but the compartmented tank has one wall that surrounds both compartments. If there's a leak in one compartment, you have to shut down the other compartment. So you lose them both, so you don't have redundancy. So unless there's something special about your site that you need the space that you save in a compartmented tank, there's really not much of an advantage. And for this site, there wasn't. So that option went away in the first screening, and we're just looking at the either above ground or below ground, the 2 10Ks. Also on the side, we were looking at the cost and options for a 2,000 gallon, much smaller gasoline tank, either above ground or below ground. So just as a little preface to our design summary, I want to run through some of the regulatory requirements for tanks so you can kind of see some of the difference between above ground and below ground. So anywhere you see UST, underground storage tank, if I forget to say that, it's kind of the shorthand from the engineering world. So first of all, operator training, we've already talked about that. You have to have trained operators on site. If one of your guys who's the designated operator leaves, you got to retrain them, you've got to keep things on file with DEC. The DEC inspectors who come through are going to look for your records out 5 to 10 years, actually, the way it adds up. You are required, when you're putting in new tanks, to be sure that they are double wall tanks. So the inner wall holds the product, the outer wall is there to contain spills and also to provide a place where you can test for leaks. 2 choices on piping. You can have pressurized piping, where your pump is actually sitting in the tank and it's pushing product. If you think of, like water pressurized like in a garden hose, it's pushing product toward the dispenser. That is seen from an environmental standpoint as being higher risk. Because if you get a leak in the pipe, now you have pressurized product trying to get out, and it can spread pretty quickly through the soil or the groundwater. So both EPA and DEC have stricter requirements for pressurized piping. So you have to have two kinds of leak detection, and one of them has to be an automatic line leak detector. That triggers annual testing. I think I heard that the doctor was just out doing that.
Right.
So it's, you know, it's part of the routine now. The highway department knows how to do it, but it's one more thing that you got to keep track of and make sure you do and keep the records. There's also stricter requirements for your spill bucket and leak detection sump testing. That's where the hydrostatic testing we talked about earlier comes in. Your other choice on piping is suction piping. So instead of putting the pump in the tank, you put it up in the dispenser, and now you're like sucking product out of the tank. That's less of an environmental risk because, think about it, imagine putting a hole in the piping that the pump is sucking on. What happens there is air gets in to the pipe and the product is basically going to drop back to the tank rather than being forced out of the leak. So it's considered a safer system, doesn't have as many requirements from the feds or from the state.
Why does number 4 say pump and tank or suction?
Oh, because somebody did a cut and paste.
That's what I thought.
Yep, so good eyes, please feel free to make a correction, so that should say pump and dispenser. I did have other people look at this. I'm glad to know somebody's reading.
The
A
section.
lot of times, if you know what it is, you see
Yeah.
what you think it is.
Yeah, but that's a good catch.
The
last-
suction option is when it's at the bottom of the pump, basically.
So
There's a check valve at the bottom of the pump.
yeah, there's two kinds of suction. One is totally safe suction where you don't need any leak detection at all. And that's where the check valve is right at the bottom of the dispenser, because then anything past the check valve, if there's a leak, it will go all the way back to the tank. There's another design where you put the check valve at the tank. It needs a little less time for the pump to prime and get going, but it's not as safe because now you're holding product. But it's still not under pressure, and it still doesn't require that automatic line leak detector. So either way you're better off from a monitoring standpoint.
Does the non-pressurized fill up fast enough?
Yeah, they'll both fill up. You can, we're probably looking at like 20 gallons per minute delivery. The one other thing that I should mention about the pressurized piping is it does allow you to be farther from your dispenser. You can have the tanks farther away because you have that pump that just delivers more. With the suction dispenser, you just have to be close within 50 feet or so. And that winds up being important on this site. So really quickly on above ground storage tanks, first of all, no operator training, yay. Used to be you could not have above ground storage tanks, large ones, because of fire code. There was a concern about above ground tanks catching on fire. Over the last 20, 30 years, the industry has developed what are called protected tanks. They're UL listed, UL 2085. And they're designed to stand up to a pool fire, meaning there's product right under the tank that has spilled under it, caught on fire, and the tank will hold up to that for 2 hours. It's a 2-hour fire rating on that. So the construction to be able to do that is these are double wall steel tanks. In the space between the inner and the outer tank, there's a lightweight porous concrete. So it sort of insulates the tank. It actually gives it vehicle collision protection, ballistics protection if you need that. You can imagine some neighborhoods where you might be concerned about that. And then it provides that fire protection. It gives you the fire rating. It's porous because you need to be able to have product, if there is a leak, still be able to find its way down to the bottom of the tank where your leak sensor is. that's the standard that you need to meet if you want to have an above ground tank. So any design here would be a protected tank. The pressurized, if you have underground piping in the tank, you have the same, not in the tank, but if you're connected to underground piping, you still have that requirement for an ALLD, but the rest of the leak detection isn't quite as intense as it is for an underground tank. Suction piping, again, less monitoring. I skipped over number 3 because I wanted to walk up here. DEC has some special requirements for large tanks that have to do with the secondary containment. And it's because even though you have a double walled tank, you can still get spills outside. And I just wanted to show you how that works. So imagine the delivery truck driver comes up and he starts to fill the main tank here with product, and he's not paying attention, or the overfill prevention valve fails. Something goes south. He's filling up, doesn't notice what he's doing. It gets above the stop line, keeps going, hits the top of the tank. There is nowhere for that product to go except out the vent. And it will, and it can go quite a ways. And it's believe it or not, it's one of the biggest causes of spills now because the tanks themselves are so good. And I guess that's a message I'd like to relay right now. Above ground, underground tanks now are 30, 40 years ahead of when your tanks went in. There's very, very few just straight tank failures these days, unless the tanks are badly managed or poorly installed. So we're more concerned about the accessories, everything that's attached to the tank, and the people that are managing it. So for large tanks where this can be potentially a big spill, and because you do have a big volume and in the remote chance that you have a catastrophic failure, DEC requires that you have additional containment, and you basically have 2 choices. You can take this tank and put it in a dike, a great big steel tub, you've probably seen them. The problem with the dikes is, and the board probably knows this, they're a royal pain because it rains, they fill with stormwater. Now you got to get the water out, and you can't just pump it out. You have to check it, make sure there's no machines on it, log it, keep records that DEC is going to want to see. You get ice in it in the winter and snow, you can't get that out. Now you don't have your volume, your containment volume that you're supposed to have. It's a possible violation. They're really kind of a pain. So the other choice that DEC gives you is what this illustration is showing. You can add on an OP, overflow protection chamber. So it's like this separate extension to the tank. There's a wall between this overflow chamber and the regular tank. Same scenario I was talking about before. The product is filling up and up and up and up and up. It goes too high, and I know it's really hard to see there, but at the very top of this dividing wall, there's an opening, a little weird. So instead of going out the vent, what happens is the product goes into the leak chamber. There's a sensor there, there's alarms. There's plenty of volume, 20% capacity there to give the driver time to wake up and turn the thing off and don't have a leak outside the tank. Another advantage of this, if you have an overflow in a dike, the dikes are always dirty. They've got dust and grit and grime in them. Once your nice clean fuel hits the floor of the dike, you're not going to be able to use it again. If you do have an overflow situation with the OP tank, that's enclosed, it's clean. Once you get things kind of set to rights over here, you're going to be able to reuse that fuel. And the clincher is, it's gotten to the point where this is actually a cheaper option than the dike. So this would be the type of design that we would recommend for an above ground tank. So our design process, with that as sort of background, we were charged with developing alternative designs, preparing opinions of probable cost, giving you a summary of the pros and cons, and a draft, very drafty schedule that we'll need your input on as far as your own approval process goes. Just to minimize any confusion, I think you all got a copy of our draft report that was dated October 7th. I was able to sit down with the county manager and the superintendent the day after we issued it and kind of walked through it, talked about it. Got some really good feedback about directions that the county would like to go and some of the additional work that they might be able to take on that we had assumed might be done by contractors. It made a substantial change to our cost estimates and the ranking of some of the options. So what I'm going to be showing you through the rest of this presentation is based on the final report, which was revised to take those comments into account, and that's the copy, the paper copy that you have in front of you.
Ryan, who got the draft report?
Warren and then me and then all you guys.
Yeah,
It was emailed.
It was emailed to you.
I don't remember seeing it either.
Well,
There's no problem, I just wondered.
forget it ever happened, because now we have
got
the,
the committee guy, right?
the latest and greatest.
Maybe I just sent it to the committee.
It doesn't matter, I just wondered.
Okay. Well, my biggest concern was now, if you had seen the prior version of the report, I didn't want to muddy the waters too much. Just be clear that we're looking at.
Well, the only thing we talked about was the county doing some more of the work in-house, so try to get the cost down a little bit,
Mhm.
and then separating out that additional gasoline tank so that we knew precisely what the additional cost was. But
Yep.
Other than that, we didn't get too far in the weeds, I would say.
Yep. The only other thing we talked about was the heaters for the
Oh, right.
above-ground storage tanks, and I'll talk about that a little bit. So, the things that we took into account, there are some changes happening on that parcel. That's going to be the location of the new maintenance building. And actually, I have a question about that. Do you know is there a time frame for that building to go up?
No,
Okay.
just
All right.
potential saving space on the site for future.
Okay. Obviously, we looked at traffic patterns, the fueling truck access that you kind of saw in the little animation. Safety, both in terms of the tank and environmental risk, but also in terms of traffic and pedestrians and all the people that potentially would be using this new maintenance building and needing to park and walk from place to place on site. Cost, obviously, the regs that we talked about, and the fact that you're going to be living with this tank for 30 years or maybe even more, and there's operations and maintenance to take into account.
Warren, are the fire departments and the state and stuff gonna fuel there too, or is that?
Same as it is
Same as
now,
it is?
it'll be
Okay.
the same. That's why we're trying to go with
Yeah.
2,000 gallon
Okay,
tanks.
good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what did we start with? Lucky for us, the county had done a survey, so we had this survey drawing. We used our CAD software that we saw it work with to model the vehicle paths. We contacted some manufacturers to get up to the date equipment and cost info, and obviously drew on our project experience across the Northeast.
Get your iPads.
So what you're looking at here is the existing system, and you can see it seems to work pretty well. It's reported to work pretty well in real life, and the software said the same thing. There's plenty of room for the fuel delivery truck to get on site, make his turn, drop his fuel, get back out without a lot of backing up and K-turns and getting in the way of the vehicle fueling shed. Normally, if nothing is going to be changing on a site, we wouldn't change anything. We would take the old tanks out, make a little bit bigger excavation because they're slightly bigger tanks, plop them back in, or else fill it in and put above ground storage tanks. If it's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But in this case, there's some new stuff going on. So you have the, oh, yeah, it does work. You have this proposed new building going in, and you've got all these vehicle bays, we're assuming, something like this. And they're pretty much aimed straight at our little tank pad, right? So the upshot of that is gonna be a lot of heavy vehicle traffic right in that area. We would give you a concrete tank pad, we would give you H20 rated manhole covers, but if you're gonna have a fueling system operating for 30 years, we just really can't recommend putting it right in the center of that traffic and vehicle exposure. It's just inevitable that despite the best you can do, you're gonna have soil shifting, you're gonna have some stresses on the tanks and on the manways, and you're certainly gonna beat up all the ground level fittings and probably have difficulties with leaks around the seals and sumps. It's no longer a location that we would recommend to put the tanks.
Is that the storage building one that's there now, the cold storage?
To the right, it
To
is.
the right?
Yeah, the one to the left is the new structure.
The new
proposed.
maintenance one?
Yeah, this is proposed with, you know,
That footprint comes from the Burger car.
Sure.
Report. The orange.
The cold storage building's to the right.
To the right of
Right
that.
where she is with the pointer.
yeah,
Up
so
there,
there's
okay.
that. Here's the existing tank
Mhm.
pad, here's the existing fueling island. And I would call your attention to the ditches alongside the road that impose some limits on our driveway access getting in and out. So we looked at a couple of different options, staying right where everything is right now. We rejected as an option going forward. This was the first concept that we advanced to the point of providing you a plan so you could see how it looked. We looked at the site, we looked at this great little space between the two buildings that will be created once the new building goes up. It's out of the way of traffic. It allows, it does work with the fueling truck with some minor improvements to the driveway. It's not a bad spot, except for the one thing is we're far enough from the dispenser island, about 120 feet, that we would need to use pressurized piping here. So that comes with the higher regulatory burden. Underground tanks, as a rule, are cheaper than above ground tanks. You're not working at heights, you don't have to paint them. They work great, they last a long time, they're not a bad option. So those are some of the pros and cons of that particular concept.
How does the pricing work though? You've got more labor over time in the underground than you do.
Exactly. And that's kind of the trade-off that you have to make. And some of that's a little hard to quantify, but I'm sure Ward can weigh in with the hours he spends dealing with the records and regulatory stuff. Concept 2 is really the same layout, just showing that the ASTs would also work in that location. Same benefits in terms of being out of the way of traffic. I would say in either case, there might be brief periods where there's a little bit of interference between the fueling truck and either, this bay or this bay of the building. I don't know if your guy tends to come in the middle of the night when there's not too much else going on, but typically it's going to be about an hour, give or take, that he would be there, and there might be some conflicts.
How many times a week would they come?
What do you get for deliveries, Jim? How often? 2 to 2.5 weeks.
Okay, so we need to be weekly then, yeah, okay.
Yeah, and these tanks are a little bit bigger than what you have now, so I would think for the county, especially in wintertime, the biggest thing is just making sure that, given weather conditions, that you're always set to deal with whatever time period you need to be looking at. I do want to talk right here about one significant downside to above ground storage tanks, which is we're up here in the North Country and it gets cold in the winter. And when diesel fuel gets cold, it tends to gel and then it doesn't want to go anywhere, including into the vehicles where you need it. So basically you have two options. Many facilities, a lot of the OGS facilities, a lot of the DOT facilities, a lot of DOT facilities in other states that have above ground storage tanks use tank heaters. So these are like, they're shaped like rods. You can't put them in the side of the tank because then you have a penetration in the side of a petroleum storage tank, and that's not allowed by code. So they're like long rods that come in from the top. They go down to within 6 inches or so of the bottom of the tank. The heating element, the actual heating part of that rod is maybe 15 inches or so at the very bottom. And you can never let the product go lower than the heating element because there's the potential for them to overheat. That limits your useful capacity in the tanks a little bit. I mean, you might not normally go down that low anyway, but it constrains your emergency drawdown volume a little bit. The other thing it does is add a lot of cost because you're adding the heaters, you're adding the controls, you're adding all the electrical, you're adding probably another panel box at least because of the power draw on these. You're insulating the tanks to minimize the amount of heating you have to do, and it adds up to a chunk of change. And based on our conversation last week, we revised our original estimate that included heaters to go the other direction. The other direction is you manage your fuel blend. So as the weather gets colder, you cut it, I think you use kerosene, right? Mm-hmm. To the point where the fuel always has a low enough viscosity that you don't worry about gelling without having to heat it. So that takes diligence and it takes management on the part of the facility, but the highway department already has experience with that. It was a 5,000 gallon tank?
Yeah, that was prior.
Yep. And that seemed to go pretty well. So for purposes of this study, we have assumed that we would not be including heaters, that there would be fuel management. What we would recommend is that when the tanks are constructed, and tanks this size are always custom built for the site because every site's a little bit different. We would spec a few extra ports on the tank so that if ever you decided you did want to go to heaters, you'd be able to do that pretty easily. So it doesn't have to be an ultimate commitment one way or the other.
Warren, isn't the fuel already cut, like from the 1st of November or the 1st of April or something like that when it's delivered?
Yeah, you gotta start ordering it again, you know.
Yeah.
We usually start asking like middle of October, and
Yeah.
they're starting to cut a little bit then, and as I get into November, we like to be at a 60-40 mix.
That's what I thought,
Yeah.
yeah. So that would work for most places.
That would work. The only,
Would you be down on that tank if you're getting it, I mean, between the fill-ups? If you're going to that bigger tank, you're gonna have, for how long it's gonna be sitting in between shipments.
Mm-hmm. You're thinking of,
Well, my concern is it happens to us at the fire department. You don't burn enough fuel out of that tank to cut it to the 60-40 ratio.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
Because you're not putting enough fuel in each fill-up. So, I mean, that's the only
Yeah.
question I got.
Getting it
Not that I
cut
wanna
early.
heat it.
Right. Just getting it cut early enough.
We may have to cut
Right.
cut it earlier than
Right.
normal at a higher rate.
Right.
Okay?
and that's exactly why it's a trade-off. I mean, you have to be more conscious of what time of year is it, and how much fuel do I have left, and when do I need to start adding how much, for sure.
You're gonna have to get you a calculator.
He just eyeballs it. So concept 1, concept 2 were pretty much the same, just switching underground and above ground tanks. We did look at another layout. that would allow us to go to a suction dispensing system. And that's moving everything to the east side. Right now we're showing just the underground in the figure, but the above ground would take about the same space. Use a little bit more concrete, but there's a lot to like about this layout. One of the things is now we're confining all the fueling activities just to one side of the site. There's no interference up here. You can have this space back for your storage units or whatever else you might need near the new building.
Prime office.
The livery truck can't actually make the turn as the driveways are configured right now. There would have to be more improvements than we were showing for the other layout. The other piece of the site improvements is putting the tanks this close to that ditch. Right now we don't have any geotechnical information on the rock to know whether it's competent or what the soils really are there. So our cost includes the contingency for piping the drain in the ditch and filling the ditch in so that you have security right there knowing that you've got the soil stability that you need for either above ground or below ground tanks. There might be some other advantages to the site to having those ditches filled in and covered. It would certainly reduce a potential environmental liability, especially with the tanks this close, if at least this much of the ditch were closed over and didn't go directly to storm.
Warren, is there any issue with the 100-foot ladder truck for the fire department getting through there?
I don't think so, no.
It shouldn't be in a turning radius any different, should there?
Off the top of my head, that sounds right. We could certainly run it.
Because they do go in and out to fuel, that's the only thing I'm thinking.
Yeah.
There's only one.
Yeah.
If they can get in there now, I don't think it would be.
But it shouldn't be any different, right?
No, 'cause I think your pumping system's pretty close to where the original one is now, right?
It's really the same spot.
Yeah, they can get
So
there,
if
so there'd be no problem. Good.
If they can do it now, they would be able to do it.
Yeah, they can.
They would be able to do it here. So I guess any questions on those conceptual layouts? Okay. So comes down to dollars. Oh, I'm sorry, I did want to mention each of those. I didn't really talk about them as I was going by. Each of those options showed a gasoline tank, either underground or above ground. Over on this end of the site, the thinking was to isolate that fueling traffic from all the activity that's going on over here. One disadvantage, I guess, of this location is that the large fueling truck wouldn't be able to get there. We were assuming that it would probably be more of a pedal truck during the gasoline deliveries because it's not as large a tank. So separating the costs from the diesel and the gasoline, you wouldn't, I know the numbers are a little surprising for the gasoline tank. The gasoline cost includes the tank itself, which runs high 20s, 30s. Its own independent dispensing system, piping, all the tank accessories, the fuel management, the electrical work. It needs its own concrete pad, its own concrete vehicle pad, all the excavation and paving, and including trenching back to the panel of the vehicle shed. Depending on your assumptions, you're probably looking at $90,000 to $110,000 plus your design and contingency. So based on the input that we received last week, sounds like that's not a direction that the county wants to head at this point. You have access to fueling offsite.
We wanted to break it out so we could see the difference, you know. Instead of building it in, this was kind of one that we wanted to explore and see what the cost would be, so we wanted to make sure it was separate from the other.
And you could, you could say, well, what would happen if you put the fueling back with the diesel? That wasn't our original charge. It's still going to be a lot of money, probably compared to the level of use that we had.
if you guys recall, when we just first sat down with Barbara in that special meeting we had, we talked about, well, as long as they're doing this, why don't we look into doing gasoline as well? So this was the extra.
Yeah,
for
because
the
at one
gas.
time we were just going diesel.
Right.
Right. Okay, so setting that aside, focusing just on the basics. If you read the original report, the costs based on the assumptions in that report kind of skewed toward that option 1 and 2 location. Based on the county self-performing a fair amount of the site work that's associated with filling in the ditch, doing that part of it, and also taking out the heating system for the ASTs, you can kind of see the, oops, if I would use the right button, the costs kind of bunch up. I mean, comparing UST on the west to UST on the east, there's a little bit of a savings, not quite as much as you think because there's a little more concrete work for that long linear as opposed to a square pad. The ASTs a little cheaper on the east side as well. That all has to do with shorter piping runs and not having a pressurized piping system. They do kind of bunch up here. So we're generally talking low end of the 300,000 for the basic construction costs. Design costs traditionally, just for estimating purposes, tend to be in the 10% range. Right now, at the conceptual design stage, when there's a lot of unknowns, we usually add a fairly hefty contingency because we don't know what else, as you get into the detailed design, might come up that you would want. So just to give you an outside conservative number, that's what those sort of percentage buffers are for. The more advanced from the design you get, the lower the contingency cost goes. So, the takeaway, well, I'll just go through these in order. These costs assume that the county would self-perform the work associated with the filling in the ditch and the piping and stuff. There could be additional savings if the county's able to self-perform some of the other work. Obviously, I think some of the excavation, some of the asphalt removal and repaving, potentially the concrete work. We didn't really talk about that.
I think
but
we talked a little bit more about it without you, Barbara. I don't know if we want to get into. There's a lot of liability if something goes wrong. Once the concrete's in there, it'd be great to just be able to blame it on another company.
That's a big consideration actually, and I'm going to raise
Well,
that
you know
in another.
what I mean.
I absolutely
Not have a
do.
warranty of some kind, you know.
Yep. Yep.
Warren, your experience with rock, you excavated down to the JCC building, right?
Right.
Wasn't there some rock in there?
Yeah, there's a blast down there,
So-
water line coming in.
I would think that maybe some boring here would be in line to give us a little better idea.
Mm-hmm.
And probably money well spent.
Yep.
Okay.
I would agree with that. And that would be part of the next design phase, to get somebody out and get some actual geotech information so that we would be able to design accordingly. Another potential cost savings, and I'm sure everybody at this table is more familiar with your procedures with OGS than I am, but sometimes you are able to get better prices doing equipment procurement through OGS. I did check OGS has a system where state agencies can also get reduced rates on design and construction, but it turns out that is only available to state agencies. I asked.
Sure.
And we discussed a couple times all the costs here except for the fuel management pedestal assume new equipment. Going into the next design phase, we could reevaluate that. I know the dispensers were rehabbed recently. We can look at it. I can tell you that it always seems like a better deal when you think about it to reuse old equipment in a new system than it seems to work out, but that's not saying we can't, on a case-by-case basis, look at what could be salvaged and reused.
I think we were just thinking about ways to get it from that $600,000 range back down to $400,000 range. I think that's a little more palatable.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least we're not in the 600,000 anymore, so the site work up on that. So. And you know, about these costs, anybody who put in a tank 30 years ago is going, geez, wow, that's, you know, not what I remember. To me, it's kind of like cars. You know, the cars that we drive today are way higher tech, they're way safer, they're way more comfortable, they're way more durable than they were 30 years ago, and we are just paying a heck of a lot more for them than I remember 30 years ago. It's kind of the same way with tanks. The technology is way, way better. It costs something to do that. But you save it in environmental liability, and you save it down the road in operational maintenance. This is just, I'm not going to try to read this here or go through any of the details. We roughed out a schedule for getting the tanks installed by fall of 2020. I would love to have a conversation offline with Ryan and with others who are more familiar with your approvals and procurement processes. But one thing I did want to just call out is the tank order and delivery. Typically for tanks these size, you should allow at least 8 weeks.
Yeah, you mentioned that in our first meeting too.
Yeah, so we would work really hard to front load that in the shop drawing and approval phase. But the flip side of that is that there's a bunch of stuff you can be doing while you're waiting for the tanks. The excavation, some of the concrete work, depending which options you go with, because you're going to be stuck putting the concrete for a month anyway.
How long will we be without functioning down there through this roughly?
Depends a little bit which option you go with.
Okay.
If, you know, if we're way up by the buildings, there's a lot we can do without interfering with anything. If we're working right by the dispensers, might be a little less time before we have to stop and pull the tanks.
That's a better site.
I'm sorry?
Isn't that a better site?
On the east side?
Yeah.
To
Depending
me,
on rock.
Depending on rock. To me, it looks better. You know, it's up to you guys to kind of weigh all this download that you're getting and see whether you agree with that or not.
Isn't that where the tanks are now?
Do what?
Where are the tanks now?
They're sitting pretty close.
Where the general facility,
Yeah.
So the tanks right now are right there,
Yeah, you're driving over them, I think.
driving over them.
Yeah.
Which may have had something to do with the
No, they're blacked off. We don't drive over them.
You
Oh, you don't?
No, we drive
okay.
around them.
Oh, okay. I stand corrected.
So if you put the new one there, you could block that off and drive around it too?
It would be tougher with the building there, like you
That's what I
said.
thought.
A couple of windows or the doors, right? You know, there's a couple end bays would be
So
tough.
imagine these trucks coming out.
Wouldn't be ideal.
No, I mean, you'd have to put a reinforced pad over it if you were gonna drive on it. But it could be done.
All the better for the east. If the rock will participate with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can do a lot of things, right?
Enough time and money, you can do anything.
All right. Just real quick, I am not gonna drag you guys through this summary table. It's in the report. It just kind of reiterates what I was talking about before in terms of the piping and the types of tanks and the locations. There's a couple other things in there like setbacks, but they're pretty straightforward. So overall, we described and evaluated 3 conceptual layouts. The lowest cost option is actually the USPs at the east side location, but the cost differential there between the USPs and the ASPs was a small percentage of the overall price. And we would really recommend that the county take into account that it's just a lot easier to manage an above ground tank. And that translates over 30 years, you know, $1,000 a year, hours that it takes to
with the exception of tank heaters and everything else.
Yeah, so we're assuming for, these costs are based on having no tank heaters, that fuel would be
You're really
managed.
gonna save any money with an AST versus a UST if you heat it?
If you heat it, it's gonna cost a lot more money.
Is there anybody in Lewis County heating their tanks?
Scaffolding, I mean, we've got a lot that's outdoors that needs to be fixed and replaced and salted and people walking on it and tripping. Above ground tanks have a lot of apparatus that need to be watched and
You
maintained.
still have to have the pit too with an AST, right? The containment pit underneath it.
Not for the tank. The tank is a double wall tank.
So you don't, this DEC doesn't require a containment area anymore?
Not,
No,
they give you a choice, and that was when I talked earlier about that overflow chamber.
You have that,
They let you use
Yeah.
that instead,
Yeah.
which is a much better way to go, in my opinion. The other thing I mentioned though is that in either case, because there is underground piping from the tanks to the dispenser island, where it comes up below the dispenser, you would need to have, it's new requirement to have containment in the dispenser. So that's a new requirement since 2015. So that was a little long-winded. I thank you very much. Any other questions? I'm happy to take them now or later.
Anybody got any questions as far as we go?
No, it was a great presentation. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for hanging in there, and thanks for your interest. It's, you know, it's an important project, and we're excited to be working on it. So, next step would be to make some decision going forward for the design phase.
Yeah, I think, you know, I don't know what kind of timeline these guys would like to review everything that you've provided, but, you know, it's very likely, Barbara, that we will do some type of conference call or something to, I think, once they've had time to look at the reports, I might then have some additional questions, so, but I don't know what the committee, you know, Jerry, what you guys wanna do to move forward at this point.
Well, I mean, it's up to what people wanna do. A little bit of time, a week or so, to go through this and then meet.
Well, I think we need some
I gotta
time.
look it over.
Is that,
A little bit of time.
Is that long enough? You want a couple weeks or?
Well, a couple weeks for me, but it doesn't have to be.
I would say two.
The
There's a lot going
ASTs
on.
with the site
Can we-
redesign, you have to go back to the pressurized pumps also, I think.
No, no. The layout 3 could all be done with suction piping.
Okay.
That's the one you said that was probably, from your perspective, was probably better of the ideas going far east.
It's looking pretty good to me, you know, because it allows you to do the suction piping. It's the pressurized piping. There's more bells and whistles. It's a more complicated system. It can work fine. I don't know if you've had trouble with your line leak detector. They can be fussy, and when the weather's changing, and they kick off on you.
Yeah, they kicked off, and we've had to, you know, have them come up and adjust, replace, it's just
Yeah,
maintenance.
I will say, and it's in the report, the in-tank pumps, the submersible turbine pumps that go with the pressurized piping are very simple. They're hard workers. They're reliable. The suction pumps that are in the dispensers just have more parts and pieces. They have belts and things that can break. If you were to go with the suction system, we would recommend just putting an extra pump in the dispenser, which is a pretty easy thing to do. So you have a spare if one goes down and switch to the other one.
If you went with the pressurized, I mean, is there another sleeve that would be in and bring it to a central location, or how do you find out if you have leaks between there and the dispenser?
So the piping from the pump to the dispenser is a double wall pipe.
Okay.
And if there's a leak from the inner pipe, you arrange it so that it will slope, the piping slopes back to a sump on top of the tank, and the product comes out in the sump, and then there's a float sensor there that tells you that there's liquid.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. All right. You guys have now heard more about tanks than you probably ever wanted to. I will yield the clicker and get my thumb drive back and let you get on to other stuff.
Thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you very much for
Barbara,
giving
is
me
this
the
yours or
opportunity.
whose is this?
Oh, I should probably take the
You
last.
can keep it, Larry.
It's a nice one.
It is.
We got some problems on the outside. We ever looked at that?
On the, across the road, you mean?
No, on the backside of that new building.
I don't know what you mean. Further back.
Yeah, I'm just asking, I'm not trying to change.
Yeah, no, I don't know what, I didn't ask them to look at it.
Well, the thing is, that's a new building, okay, here,
We're just gonna put it back here.
put it back here. I'm just throwing
Yeah.
this out, you come in here, make the loop, if we move that building a little bit, we go this way, and they could come right back out, so potentially we would be running over.
We should ask Barbara when she's here what the cost would be if we're using any of that infrastructure.
And utilize this corner back here so the tanks also sit here and they're not running across anything, if worse gets to worse.
Ask Barbara. I mean, that'd be a good question to see if she can do a little analysis on that for us. Talk about that.
Stupid question, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. But we're looking about stuff traveling here.
Is there anything else we can get for you guys for this gas pump thing? Anything else you guys
So I'm selling all this stuff.
hope to move things forward?
Move this building over there.
I asked her to bring 13 copies, so hopefully she'll have it. I don't know what happened to the other 9. Are they?
And if we'll get all of here too. Is that something?
I've got to leave. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I'm close to that. I think so.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
just,
right.
is that something that we
Yes.
can work with? Or even if they come in.
Number 3.
I can move away from
John. Where am I eating? Up on the hill if I get there. That's what I paid for. Yeah.
I think I
He
personally.
promised us, he sent an email out before noon, said we'll be out of here before 5 o'clock.
Which one is that the one I'm worried about?
Mine's
Last
at 5.
I like the underground tank option because it's cheaper and I also think in the long run, even though yes we got to log everything and keep track of all that stuff on the ground, I think having the above ground with the
Are we in on your
catwalk,
or?
I have no clue.
heaters
I
and
haven't heard anybody say
ditches.
that.
We're rolling,
and
so.
for the above ground, I think that's a lot more to maintain and keep track of. Right.
Yeah.
And we gotta, yeah, right.
You don't need to use
But, oh, that's what we
Is that
got
good
running,
fuel
but
though,
again,
40% kerosene?
What,
Is
2
it-
years ago?
Is that what they do?
I don't care where you go in Lewis County, you gotta cut 46.
That may be something.
And they start sometime right about now.
Another option.
If you ever had a leak in an underground tank, you can go on an underground tank. I went through them for 23 years.
Thank you.
Right. A lot of other things that say that are sometimes got a percentage type with it.
Right.
One leak, whatever you $10 million is nothing. Trust me. 23 years later, we're still pumping the product. Still pumping the product.
I'm gonna get back on track here.
Oh, yeah.
Gas alley.
going through our projects.
What do you think, Tom?
Long day.
Not even been close to done yet.
Oh.
We just got started.
Well, we got started.
Tired when we started?
You started at Soil and Water. How do they do those meetings pretty close?
Take 2 hours. Today would be quicker, but. Yeah, they get a little long-winded as we go ahead.
That's right.
Snort boys over
Oh, that's one more. Brian.
Yes.
I hear you.
She called me last year. But she'd rather go to the she's got one, yeah, she got accepted.
So it's actually, it's so pretty, where you would have doors on the front.
Randy, what are you thinking on the tanks?
She was looking at you an awful lot when she was talking about cars.
It was a superstar salesman.
It just leaks out of you, you know?
It just does. It just does. She says it's true. There's a lot of extra crap on them that you don't see. I would be glad to.
Okay. We need a motion to accept the minutes.
Oh, I make a motion. I second it.
All in favor, aye?
Sorry,
Aye. That's okay, go for it. I don't.
Opposed, nay? Motion carried.
Okay, so this is the new master document. The first one is resolution to transfer $50,000 within the highway department accounts to cover line item maintenance materials overages. So, everybody in favor?
What is the overages? Yeah, what are we?
So we're moving from paving material to maintenance. Warren, do you remember exactly what? You explained it to me twice and I still can't remember.
That was the monies that came
From the insurance, right?
insurance from paving some of the windows,
Gotcha.
window payments in the road. We collected it from insurance monies.
Okay, we have a motion.
I just need to know who's in favor and
Yeah,
if
just-
anybody's opposed.
For this system.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carried.
Resolution to appropriate state grant funds into probation accounts for raise the age expenses, $10,000.
Any questions?
This is our portion of the raise the age that the state, if you recall, when they changed that policy, they said it would be 100% reimbursable by the state. After several different budgets, maybe 7 different budgets we submitted to them, they finally accepted that we would get $10,000 to cover the full cost of this program for this year. So,
And it does that?
so far, we really haven't had
Our only expense has been from last August of
Right.
2018, when we went to some mandatory training.
Yeah.
So we'll get that all back, we'll get the overnight stay back and the mileage back. And so we gotta have that money in our budget to be able to appropriate that and bill the state, so.
we started with a much more complicated model.
Oh my
where
goodness.
We wanted every interaction with, the way the state law is written, it says any and all expenses associated with this cost will be diverted to the state. So we interpreted that as, administration time, my time, Patty's time, like we do with DSS, right? We appropriate administration and overhead, to those programs that can be reimbursed. Apparently all the counties had the same idea because it took them over a year to approve everybody's budget. And at the
Yes,
end of the
now
day,
some counties
it got
are still
whittled
not
down
that.
to just $10,000.
Crazy.
So, yeah.
Any questions? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Resolution to appropriate funds received through employment and training into the trail maintenance account for the Pratt Northern Careers Gear Program. There's actually two of these that were combined. So one is $6,046.28 and the other one is $1,123.22.
Any questions?
Not for me.
Okay, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution to designate Chamber as tourist promotion agency for the county and commit 2020 budget allocation of $40,000 for the I Love New York program.
Same as last year.
That's what we did last year.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution to approve agreement with New York State Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Services for grant award of $171,949 for the public safety answering points, PSAP state support to counties for eligible public safety call taking and dispatching expenses. Performance expenses are covered for a period of January 1st through December 31st, 2020. Also, resolution to appropriate the grant funds of $171,949.
All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Nay?
I'm good.
Resolution authorizing agreement through the Lewis County Probation Department and Rubensaul, Knudsen and Associates Psychological Services to provide sex offender evaluations and counseling services for individuals and to provide psychological evaluations and treatment for juvenile delinquents, adolescent offenders when required from January 1st to December 31st, 2020 at the following fee rates.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution to transfer funds in Highway Department to cover costs of hydraulic tree trimmer. The amount is $1,725.
All in favor?
Well, just a second, is this that boom mower that,
No, it's a pole saw.
it's a pole saw, it's
Yeah,
not?
they use it when they're a bucket.
Oh, okay.
It's a 6-foot pole with a, on the end of it. Runs off the bucket truck when you plug it right in, it's hydraulically driven.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution to close Capital JCC Extension Center amount and appropriate funds. The amount is $4,045.30.
Where does this money
Yeah.
go?
There isn't any money left.
Oh.
This is just appropriating the interest that we earned,
Okay, thank you.
and then we can close it.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution authorizing the grant contracts by and between the County of Lewis and New York State Office of Indigent Legal Services to provide grant funds in the amounts of $113,928 and $56,964 to assist the county in improving the quality of indigent legal services provided.
This is what Mike Young was here talking about last month.
Any questions? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution to appropriate New York State Indigent Services grant funds and public defender accounts. The amounts are grant number 8, $113,928, and grant number 9 is $56,964.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution to appoint members to Traffic Safety Board, Kyle Chartrand and Douglas Salmon, to fill unexpired terms of resigning members through December 31st, 2021.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution to adopt local law number 7, 2019, Energize New York Open C-PACE Financing Local Law.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Resolution to appropriate funds received through Lewis County Employment and Training into the sheriff account for the Pratt Northern Careers Here program in the amount of $3,142.63.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Resolution authorizing agreements with various local businesses for advertising on the Lewis County Public Transportation Bus for the term of January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2020. And it lists them.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Resolution authorizing an agreement between the County of Lewis and Key Government Finance Incorporated for the purchase of a 2020 Mack Granite Model GU64 FR tandem axle plow chassis with all attachments and accessories as set forth in the equipment lease agreement for an amount of $242,074.92 to be financed at an annual rate of 3.31% over a 5-year period in annual installments of $51,618.35 commencing November 8th, 2019.
That's I'm sorry, that's actually changed to November 15th in the final one.
To the 15th?
Yes.
And to appropriate the $51,618.35 payment.
That's in the equipment budget.
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
You know they're on strike, right?
Who is?
Mac.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, we got the truck already, so that's something.
Oh, do you? Well, that's good.
They just went out.
Does anybody got any other questions?
Oh, I have 3 motions.
Okay.
So the first motion I need is, a motion to authorize Sheriff Carpinelli to refill part-time dispatcher due to a resignation to accept a full-time position elsewhere.
2 different ones.
Oh, another one? Okay.
I'll move it.
Second? Second. Tom, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed?
The second motion is to authorize Matt O'Connor to refill full-time cleaner effective immediately.
Andrew, who's second?
I'll go.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
And the last one is a motion to authorize Matt O'Connor to issue RFP for snow plowing at Lewis JCC Education Center for the 2019/2020 season.
Tom and Ron?
We wanna see if we can give us a contract to do it cheaper. JCC's paying us anyway, so if they can do it cheaper, then we can do it more.
Well, I think we have to. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
We'll see where the proposals come back.
The other thing just to think about and stuff like that, heat and air at the PSB building, whether we ought to try to schedule getting that done too next year. I know we have put some money away for the last 2 years, but it may take a little bit more than that, but.
Yeah, we've got some tentative capital ideas that'll go before the finance and rules today, and then you guys will have the whole rest of the month until November 5th to, well, then you'll have November 5th till November 19th to make any budget changes, so anything like that you think's a priority and we need to shift things around, we can do that.
And do we wanna try to pick out a date to get together and have a discussion on Stantex in 2 weeks or so? Any preferences as far as, what day of the week?
Tuesday's the best for me.
Well, you're all gonna be here on the 5th, and we can meet at 3 instead of 5 or 4, you know.
Perfect.
So you want what time?
A couple hours?
Doesn't matter. Three's fine. Three's good.
What's this meeting now? Ryan?
Talk about you, Ron.
Oh, I don't need to be here.
I'm sorry, Larry.
I said, do you need 2 hours or 4 or?
I mean, I just want
I don't know
people.
if there's anything on the agenda, do you know?
I don't know.
I don't think we have a 4 o'clock, but I can, you know, when Terry comes back, we can ask her.
Ask her, and, we just want enough time that people can ask the question, and we can try to get answers and get it moving.
Do you want me to have Barbara available via conference call? I mean, we probably shouldn't have her drive all the way back up.
Yeah, it wouldn't too.
Wouldn't hurt, yeah.
Cause we'd like to meet with Warren too. In there, so, getting stuff back and forth. And that's it.
So, we didn't put it on the agenda, but Ward, is here if you got a couple extra seconds.
Yep.
We just wanted to update on a couple properties that people have been, chatting about, so come on up, Ward. Then we've got some other stuff, some real big policy changes we wanna pitch to you guys. We wanted to do, the fuel pumps, keep that moving, so next month, you know, we'll have Ward with some big policy stuff that we've been working on and ask you guys to weigh in on. So this is just some junkyard and some properties that, you wanna run through the Turin building and some of the junkyard properties, Ward?
So you did get my report, so you had a chance to look at that. So Turin building, we had another complaint. It was brought in front of the legislators, I believe, the last meeting. And I think the board was gonna discuss amongst themselves, potentially move it to the full board to make a consideration. And I think what it was at that time, that it was gonna be if they were gonna get a price on what it would actually cost to demolish that structure. So that's.
Who is gonna get a price?
The legislators, I do believe.
We were gonna get a price?
It wasn't me.
I
So.
just heard about
No.
the other day.
When was this word? I'm
The
sorry.
I
only
thought
thing
it was
that,
last
the only
week.
thing that came to the board was the complaint letter.
The
There was no
complaint,
action
right,
letter.
so that's what probably the proper thing to do, so we don't know how much it's gonna cost to take that building down, or what the board even plans on doing anything with it. So, it would seem that to determine how much it's gonna
Is
cost.
it the first step to notify the owners of the building that they
Correct.
need to do
Yeah.
something? Before we get involved?
It has to come to this board, to this committee,
To get it started.
to get it started.
Right. But, I mean, the thing is we also need the full board. And what are you talking about getting started? If it's sending the person a note.
To appear before you,
Pardon?
to appear before this committee, to appear
Right.
before the board, the
Right,
legislative board.
cause you've already warned them, so. You want an okay for that, or you want a study too? And that's where I'm confused.
Well, I think it would have to be just written from the board to start with.
Okay? So you want.
So, Jerry, can I interject a little bit? So, is it, have you determined it to be an unsafe structure?
The board here has already condemned it. It is an unsafe
Okay,
structure.
so for the next meeting then, we'll do what we did with the other structure, and that is bring a notice, set a public hearing. I can also tell you, the committee, that I've reached out to the environmental attorney that we have working on, you know, the dairy property as well, to see whether or not he could have somebody take a look at this, some pictures that we have of this property, and see whether or not we could possibly get some funding from the federal government to do something on this building as well, because we're pretty certain there's quite a bit of asbestos. So we're looking at that as well. But the procedure will be that we'll do a resolution next month to set the public hearing and walk it through those steps, and hopefully by then we might have some more information on whether or not there could be any kind of funding available to assist with testing this property, because it's gonna have to be tested before it's demolished.
Right. Then you gotta do an environmental survey
Right.
first.
But
Right.
let's take them in order here now,
Right.
bunch them all up.
Yes.
Well, that's why I think we've been cautious about going down this road, because we get into it and then we realize how expensive it is, you know. I've had a chance to talk to a couple of you guys. The good thing about that property is the lot is valuable. It's at a nice four corners there. I mean, you would think that if we invested some money now, over the course of 20 to 50 years, if something nice goes there, like a gas station or something, you know, we'd get our investment back, property taxes and sales tax, but you never know how those things happen. So,
No, you don't. Do you need anything from us to move it forward?
no, that's it.
Okay.
One other thing, I'm sorry.
The junkyard, we were talking about the junkyard property, so Rauscher and Morshek, we
They
moved
will
on
be
those.
coming on the fifth
Okay.
in front of this committee. And
In
we
front of the
need
full board.
to, also address the junkyard law again. No law can stay static. This one is no exception. We do need to make some changes in it. And, I'll be bringing that in front of the committee to, those changes need to be done.
Okay, when you gonna
Where's
do
the
that,
agenda?
next month?
Well, actually, it was in the,
Okay.
We were gonna do it this month, we ran out of time with Stantec, but, next month we'll have that, and then there's another couple things that Ward and I have been working on, one related to, fire, properties that have been damaged by fire, and how we can be a little more proactive about those, getting those cleaned up. There's actually a local law that we've been researching that, would allow us to hold some of their insurance money in escrow, until they apply it to the property, clean it up. So what happens now is you got a property, they get their insurance money, they walk away, stop paying taxes, and then, 7 to 10 years later, the county ends up doing it. Well, if we pass a local law that forces them to hold that, insurance money in escrow, then they have to apply it to the property rather than kind of taking the money and running. So we do have more to discuss on that, but like I said, we'll have to get to it next month.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Walt. Ready to adjourn?
Are we all done?
Unless some.
Frank wants, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just for a minute, I have 2 topics for the board's consideration. The first one is solicitations, recommendations from you for a 3-year county planning board member. There's one member that's coming up. His term will be done at the end of this year. So we'd like your input, or if you have a candidate that you wish to put forward.
When do you need it by?
By the end of the year, probably December would be, the beginning of December would probably be helpful. We also have a 1-year term and a 3-year term that will be coming up at the end of this year for our Ag Protection Board. Fred Monk will be coming up at the end of this. He's on a 3-year term. And also Rob Damagala, he is also on a 3-year term. So those are up for your consideration. You can let us know which way you want to go with that, if you have some candidates or people that you wish to put on, or you want us to reach out to those existing members. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sherry.
Those are good.
Ryan, don't we publish notice of these positions being open?
Depends. Like the Ag Protection Board, you can spend money for the ag, but I don't expect people to flood down. Or, it's probably going to be you guys having to ask people to get on. Planning Board, you might get some people volunteer, but the Ag Protection Board. I tell.
Do you want to advertise for the planning board position?
Wouldn't hurt. See what we get. What do you guys think?
Just, okay. And the Ag Protection Board want us to just see if we can, you guys, if you can find anybody, but.
Why don't you throw them in the same
Oh, was that? I may have not signed one.
There's only one to sign.
There was, okay.
Just done it all.
Never thought it was gonna happen.
We have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All aye?
Sorry.
We should start